It was very difficult. The two scariest times in my life up to that point were moving out and then being homeless. The great thing is I knew I should be scared. And when you're really scared and you really have no safety net, you can get very strategic. And so each time, probably maybe just because of what I was reading, my only safety net I felt like was I was doing something wildly dangerous. And that meant there was no room for error. There was everything relied on what I was going to do day to day. And so it did cause me to develop strategies that were, incredibly helpful. And that ended up being the basis of my work and what I do now, which is really wild. But two incredible things came out of that time in my life. To paint a mental picture, I was having panic attacks constantly. I was having constant illness. I was agoraphobic, which is a fear of leaving your home, which when you don't have a home is really exasperated to the point where like my life was just ground to a halt. I sometimes couldn't get off the street corner I was on, out from under this tree that felt safe to me. Couldn't go out and get food most days because I would have a panic attack if I left this little tree. I was shoplifting. And that was where, I had this lofty goal when I was 15, remember? I don't want to be a statistic. I did kind of good. I mean, I got myself through high school, didn't end up on the stripper pole, wasn't a drug addict. But one day I was in a dressing room and I was shoving a dress down my pants. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I am a statistic. I am a homeless kid stealing. And if I get caught and I go to jail, this is a moment in my life this is a forever lifestyle shift. But I couldn't stop stealing. I couldn't. I really was addicted. It was a real addiction. And that was so interesting to me because I didn't drink and I didn't do drugs. How did I get addicted? What was addiction? That got me very curious. Preceding that, actually, in that moment in the mirror when I was stealing that dress, I remembered that quote of happiness doesn't depend on who you are, what you have, it depends on what you think. And I was like, this is your moment, Kilcher. Like, this is your moment. Will you turn this around one thought at a time? I couldn't tell what I was thinking. Now I would call that disassociative. All I knew is I couldn't witness my thoughts in real time. And that was a problem if you're going to turn your life around one thought at a time. So my solve was, what if your hands are the servants of your thought? What if I could notice my thoughts by watching my actions? And so I dedicated myself to just writing down everything my hands did for 2 weeks, thinking maybe I'd figure out what I was thinking, and then maybe I could figure out how to think something differently. So at the end of 2 weeks, I literally was like writing down at 10:24, I opened the car door. At 10:32, I opened the bathroom door, whatever. At the end of 2 weeks, I sit down. I'm trying to look for, I have no idea what I'm looking for. But then it dawns on me, I had not had a panic attack in 2 weeks. That was a wild side effect of this experiment that I couldn't figure out how to explain. And what I had stumbled on was mindfulness. What I stumbled on was being so radically present that I didn't have time to play what I call my scary movie that would get my system worked up. I learned, and then it took practice, how to stay present. I realized my anxiety, my worry was a misuse of my creativity. What if I could channel my creativity to get really curious instead of really worried? It was like, my worry was like trying to protect my house from robbers by leaving my house to go look for robbers. It's probably best to stay in your house. What I'd learned was learning how to stay in my house, as it were. And then that felt powerful. Like once I could figure out I could make an effect on my panic attacks, I knew I was onto something. And then I started picking one thing at a time. The next thing I picked was shoplifting. Why was I addicted to it? How does addiction work? Realizing I was addicted to my pharmacopoeia, I could elicit a hormonal response that was rewarding. And there were certain chemicals in my body that I liked to elicit at certain times and not at other times. And I could break that down into an exercise. I turned that into a behavioral exercise, and then I practiced that behavioral exercise until I taught myself not to steal. And then I did that with my agoraphobia. And then I did that with my eating disorder. And each one of these things just one at a time.
And you did this while living in a car?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the time I needed it. You know, again, that's like, there was a lot of other homeless kids. It does wear on you. It's really exhausting to be homeless. All of your time is reduced to getting water, getting food, getting shelter, getting safe. And that's actually really exhausting. But you're reduced to being a Neanderthal, but instead of in a forest, you're in a city. But you're just surviving, just like an animal. Like there's no more you're doing.